And as for Minnesota, they've got Rudy Gobert now. They've finally got they've always been looking for that power forward next to Cat, but I guess now they've got that center next to power forward Karl Anthony Towns. And I'm torn on this because I do think having the two bigs can work still. I think Boston showed that this year with their running those lineups with Al Horford and Robert Williams. I think with the right head coach and the right defensive scheme in there, like you saw what Boston did where they would run these systems where they had all that length in Boston where you just say, okay, Rob Williams, you just sit in the paint, do your thing, and we're going to use these other athletic wings and lengthy guys to just fly around the court, make up for playing sort of 4-on-5 basketball. We're going to pre-switch Robert Williams out of any pick and rolls and get Horford up there, and then we'll switch everything on ball and keep you in the dunker spot as much as possible, no matter who you're defending. If the dunker spot rolls out, then you just go into the bottom corner. And I think Minnesota could do something similar this year with Gobert. Say, hey, we're going to sit Gobert down there, and unlike the issue Utah had with doing that, because Utah tried to just sit Gobert in the paint, but the issue they had was they just didn't have that length. They were running a lineup of Conley, Mitchell, O'Neal, Bogdanovic. There just wasn't that size around Gobert to allow him to sit in the paint, particularly against 5-out spacing. But I think if you're running a lineup of like Russell, Edwards, whoever you start out of Anderson, Prince, and McDaniels, and Towns, there's length there, there's speed there. I think particularly like athletes like Edwards or McDaniels, if they do start him. D'Lo, he's not a great on-ball defender, but he does have a decent defensive mind, I think, better than people give him credit for, and I think he can be a smart defender. He has got a bit of length. I want to quickly look up how big he is. I'm going to guess he's like 6'3" or 6'4" maybe. Yeah, according to Basketball Reference, it's 6'4", and yeah, that's bigger than both Mitchell and Conley, so already got more size there. You've got Edwards, who's a beast. You've got McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, slow-mo. He's not really the speediest guy, but he's still got that length. You've got Taurean Prince, who's a decent on-ball defender. He's got that length. So I think you can afford to do more of that stuff where you're just throwing Gobert in the paint and getting 4 athletes to just run wild around the court. I think that's sort of what what Minnesota did last year with under Chris Finch's, where it was a bit of chaos ball on defense. It was just, because the Towns didn't want him in the pick and roll, so it's okay, we're just going to blitz the pick and roll and then play 4-on-3 and just run wild in that space. I think the interesting thing will be what they can do with Towns. I think their ideal is just to sit him on a corner shooter. So I think this team is perfect if you're playing like a team like Philly with PJ Tucker at the 4, or you're playing a team where they're running like Maxi Kleber at the 4 or someone like that, and Towns can just sit on that big 4 floor spacing power forward. But teams like Boston, I don't know what you do against Boston. Obviously that's other side of the other conference, but when you're running up against lineups with Tatum, Brown, Smart, and Brogdon starting, do you really trust Towns defending any of those guys? And particularly in a playoff setting where they're just going to matchup hunt all night. I'm worried that Towns is going to be picked on the perimeter defensively a lot. But it'll be interesting. Maybe also giving him a full off-season where he knows he doesn't have to be working on that as that rim protector, as that 5, and he can fully focus on working on his defense on the 4, at the 4 spot as a perimeter guy. Maybe that will help him as well if he's not trying to split that load between working on both ends, and if they just say, hey, go full on, just trying to get quicker on your feet, get more nimble, slide, working your pick and roll defense. Maybe that works. I don't know. I'm not too confident because I think that would have happened by now if it was going to happen, but maybe he can do something like that. Maybe bringing in a defender like Rudy Gobert will make him say, hey, I'm going to step up my game as well. And on the offensive end, I'm not too worried about it. I saw someone tweet it out where they're like, it wasn't the thing that made Karl Anthony Towns so good offensively was the fact that he was this big floor spacing center, and putting him at the power forward spot, isn't that undermining some of his value? No, not at all in my opinion. I think defenses treated him like a 4. They treated Vanderbilt as the 5. They put their rim protector on Vanderbilt, and then they got a perimeter guy to run around with Towns because Vanderbilt wasn't a shooter. People are like, oh, how's Towns going to play in the post with Gobert there? Well, teams weren't respecting Vanderbilt's shot. So in those lineups, that Towns has worked with that before. He's worked in the post with another non-shooter. All you're doing is probably adding a bigger target for lobs or a bigger target in the pick and roll for D'Lo and stuff like that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue offensively for Towns. There will also be, particularly in the regular season, they'll be splitting minutes a lot at the backup center. I wonder whether this does make Naz Reid expendable a bit, unless they just do want to fully focus on getting Towns to play the 4, and they don't want to even give him minutes at the 5 during the regular season, knowing they have it up their sleeve in the playoffs if they need to, but they just say, no, Towns is a 4, Gobert is the 5, Towns doesn't play center, he doesn't protect the rim, he doesn't work on any of that stuff in the offseason, he focuses fully on playing the 5, maybe that's what... focuses fully on playing the 4, maybe that's what happens here, maybe that's why they kept Naz Reid, was for that reason. Maybe it was just that Utah didn't want him in the trade. I don't know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see with Minnesota. I think getting Carl Anderson and bringing back Taurean Prince are way more valuable now than even we realized at the time. I think people said they were great moves when it happened. But now seeing the fact that they gave up Vanderbilt and they've given up some of that depth, getting that length in those wings, guys that are versatile, they can play the 2, can play the 3, maybe can even play the 4 if you need to. For Prince, Anderson might be able to slip up and play the 2. He can defend wings. He can maybe switch on to guards. I think those guys will be really valuable for Minnesota next season. They've got the backup guards in McLaughlin, Noel. It'll just be interesting to see whether after having a proper playoff run, can Russell and Towns improve a little bit, because they were both really bad. I think that's still the issue, is can Russell work? Because I think it has to be Edwards' team. I think that was shown in the playoffs last season, that it's Edwards' team going forward. And can Towns work off that? Can Russell work off that? I think it'll be perfect for Gobert, because he'll now be playing 4th, 5th fiddle on offense, and I think that'll be great for him. He can focus purely on his defense. Not that he ever really was focusing on offense, but I think he'll have that pressure off him offensively, which would be really good. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see guys like D'Lo. Is there another trade in the works for Minnesota? Are they looking to bring in a Russell replacement? Are they looking to bring in another wing? Although they don't really have the cap space or the players available. I think that's the concern I have for Minnesota, is that they've really gone all in on this trade. And if it doesn't work around with Gobert and Towns in the front court, you don't have picks going forward. You don't have young players going forward. It could get messy. It could get bad quickly. D'Lo's contract will be one thing, because that comes up. That is done in, looking at it here, next season. Next season is the final year of the D'Lo contract, from what I can tell. However, you're also going to be paying Edwards soon, and you're not going to have cap space with Gobert, Towns, Edwards, Anderson, Prince, all those guys on the books. I don't think you have space. Maybe enough to not be paying the taxpayer mid-level, so you can get that like 10 to 12 million instead of that $6 million, but I don't even know if they'd have that. So it'll be interesting to see for Minnesota what they look like next season. I think it'll work in the regular season. I think it can get them a 4 or a 5 seed, particularly considering teams like, I think Denver probably won't be full strength in the regular season. They'll be giving Murray and Porter their time to come back. I think Jokic might take a bit of a backseat this regular season after the load he's had the last couple. I think the Lakers won't really focus on the regular season. They'll just focus on getting out of the play-in tournament, and they'll be happy with the 6 seed, the 5 seed, anything like that. That's even if they get Kyrie. If they don't get Kyrie, I don't even know if they can make the playoffs. The Clippers, I think, with Kawhi and Paul George, they'll load manage again. They'll be happy to sort of cruise in the regular season. So I think this team can maybe make a jump in the regular season, maybe be a bit of like a Memphis this season, where if Edwards takes that big leap and they've brought in Gobert, maybe they can like be like a 3 seed or a 4 seed maybe in the regular season. But then I think they will be put to the test in the playoffs, and where teams can really scheme for it, can plan for how to attack Towns in the pick and roll, how to attack this guys like Russell and Towns again. I think that will come into play in the playoffs, and the concern is if they do get knocked out in the first round or get swept in the second round and things don't look good, they don't really have any assets left to make a change. Overall, I love the trade for Utah. I think it's fantastic. I think they have multiple good options going forward. They can go just retool around Donovan Mitchell. They could go rebuild around Donovan Mitchell. They could go full rebuild and trade Donovan Mitchell. They can do a bunch of things there. For Minnesota, I like the trade at the moment, but I think time will tell a lot with, was it an overpay? Was it an underpay? If Minnesota go on to win a championship, like with the Lakers, no one bats an eyelid about what we gave up for Davis, but Gobert isn't Davis. And I think if things go poorly and they need to make a change and they don't have those assets available anymore, I think teams will start to question this trade. But maybe it works. Maybe you do have contracts there in guys like Prince, Anderson. They're both making like that $8 million. So you can use that. You could use a McLaughlin at his $2 million, get up to 10. You could probably trade for a guy who's 10 or 13 million. The other issue is their bench is going to take a big hit, losing Malik Beasley, I think, as well. So outside of that starting five, you're going to be running a bench of like McLaughlin, Prince, McDaniels, Naz Reid. There's not that scoring punch there. I mean, McLaughlin was amazing in the playoffs, but can he maintain that? Do you really believe that can be like your guy off the bench? I don't know. Maybe do they look to do something like start a McLaughlin and bring D'Lo off the bench? Do they look to do something like that to sort of stack that scoring? Maybe Minnesota look to do that. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Overall, love the trade for Utah. I'm waiting to see what I think for Minnesota. But yeah, it was interesting. It was a surprise. I didn't see Minnesota being the team to go out and trade for Rudy Gobert. If they did, I was surprised they didn't go after like a Capella, who I think could do similar for a lot cheaper, but maybe they couldn't make the contracts work there or whatever. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens to Minnesota this season. Alright, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any thoughts, please comment below. I'd love to hear those. Hit me up on the social media links that are down there. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.